Okay,
Max is
good.
always the loudest. He just screams into the microphone.
I apologize. I don't know what it is. I think I might be a little bit deaf.
Yes.
Hey, this is Tien, the video producer of Informa Tech, and you're listening to the AI Business Podcast. Joining me as always, the global editor of AI Business, Max Smolaks, and the deputy editor of DCD, Sebastian Moss. You might ask me, why am I being so formal today with the introduction? Because we have a guest. He is the CTO of Verne Global, Tate Cantrell. And we're going to talk to him about the red-hot Nvidia and building a data center in Iceland, a place we all want to be right now. And she was only 16. No, not a Sam Cooke song. This is Xiao Eyes, or Xiao Bin, the very popular Chinese chatbot. She's parting ways with Microsoft and she's turning 18. She's going to stay 18 for the foreseeable future, which begs the question, why is she 18? And is that a good idea to spend that much time talking to a quote-unquote best friend on the internet? Spoiler alert, not at all. All of that coming up. This is AI Business Podcast.
Here's Tate Cantrell trying to be Max Smolaks, introducing Tate Cantrell. On today's podcast, we have Tate Cantrell, CTO for Verne Global, a sustainable high-performance data center company based in Iceland.
Wow, that was great.
That was professional, Max. Take notes.
Now you're the second guest of this podcast.
I feel honored.
Great. Where are you based?
Well, I'm based just outside of Washington, D.C., right between the capital and really, honestly, the largest contingent of data centers anywhere in the world, I would say, out in Loudoun County. That's actually where I got my start in data centers, believe it or not.
And obviously, like, the whole thing is you guys have decided not to go to that place where all the data centers are and go somewhere else.
That's right. I remember I was part of a company called DuPont Fabros Technology. I actually helped them get started. Our first anchor customer was this little company at the time called Google back in the early noughts, and they seemed to have a pretty good business model. But what we did is we were able to combine real estate and technology. So the benefits of real estate that give you the ability to run your business model out and feel protected while you're doing it. And as a result, we were really successful. We built these huge data centers, and it seemed like everywhere we were putting them, they were all connected to coal-fired power grids. And the honest truth is, about 2008, I got sick of it. Felt like I wasn't leaving a good legacy for my three boys, and decided to do something else. And I landed in Iceland, of all places.
Okay, and that's a country that was essentially created by God to house data centers, right? We're going to come back to this topic in a little bit.
We have you on the podcast. We can ask you like serious question about Flippy, the hamburger flipping robot. We can get your thought on that.
Well, I read this article, and at first you just think, oh, this is the cutest thing ever. A robot flip. I mean, we all have the image. It's like the Jetsons, and the thing with the apron running around the kitchen flipping things. But I zeroed in on something interesting, and that was that the company that's offering this technology, MIAOW, is looking to not take money up front, but potentially gain on the winnings on the backside. And I think that's huge, because I think that's where technology needs to be. They need to be part of the value proposition that companies are investing in. So I think that's a really neat business. I mean, if that's a legitimate twist that they're going after, I'd love to see more of that.
So the idea is you pay subscription, right, for the robot. You don't buy the actual machine outright. It's a service. It's essentially robotics delivered as a service.
I mean, so currently you have to pay up front, but they're it's early days and they're trying to get the cost down. Yeah, and that would be the idea. It's like an employee. You pay a yearly salary, except it goes to MIAOW and it doesn't go to a human, and then they can work a lot longer than a human, which is again great for the company, less great for those workers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But it's only one restaurant in Chicago. It's gonna start in September. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. It moves on rails. It uses optical image recognition to figure out which burgers are done and when to flip them. And I guess it's gonna cost a premium.
Do you have any concerns about buying food where like no humans involved with it? And like, does that make you happier because especially now with the pandemic, no humans are touching it, or do you worry about like what it means for economies and humans?
Well, I think we as societies always need to be concerned about our relationship with technology. 100 years ago, about the time that White Castle was getting their start, my great grandfather knew how to take apart motors and rewind motors because he had to, and that was the way it went. And so I would say over time, technology helps to let's say give humans the opportunity to do more thinking and less working. So that would be the optimistic point of view. So I'd say I'm bullish on Flippy.
Mm.
Where do you think Flippy ends? Because I'm reminded of the first microwaves. They thought it was going to be in restaurants. They were these huge, massive things, and that didn't last very long because obviously microwaves got a lot cheaper very quickly, and people got it in their homes. Is Flippy going to stay in restaurants for a long time, or are we going to have our own personal chef at home?
I think Flippy will probably move to industrial facilities, and we will have more of food on demand, so to speak. Kind of. I would imagine. I can see Amazon applying this.
Mm.
Let's in
Mm.
a small burger stand out behind
Mm.
the Whole Foods that's pumping out fresh fruit.
There's this thing in Vegas we've all seen. There's the robot bartender. If you walk past it, they actually make drinks, but nobody drinks there. It's just 20 people taking photos and videos of the robotic arm moving around. So I don't mind a robotic bartender because I will not be judged, or Max will not be judged when you order your fourth drinks. I feel like this is one of those things that would probably stay because you mentioned a pandemic. This is something where people can just easily go and say, well, if there's a branch of restaurants, they just specify and say no, but no human is involved in the making of this. I feel like it probably has legs.
I hope it doesn't get legs.
Well, that's interesting. Where we should want it to go, though, is we should want this technology to get to the point where it helps companies save money, and that's why I'm really interested. Is MISO interested in, let's say, joining in the cost savings that a company can maintain, as their technology develops? I hope they don't get stuck just flipping burgers.
Yeah, I hope they go to college and learn something.
Speaking about college, this is what I'm worried about because like I'm supposedly a knowledge economy worker, but I spent 5 years at a McDonald's in North Cheam flipping burgers, and it was essentially to keep me afloat. Like what are we gonna do once these jobs, like easy, lowly paid, but like jobs that students get, jobs that people without any experience get. What are we going to do when these jobs are gone?
Well, my 17-year-old son is getting an A plus certification, and he's working at a help desk over the summer.
That is a very good argument for this kind of new job creation, right? IT help desk jobs like oh, this kind just didn't exist like 10 years ago.
But one day he could lose his job based on a system that's trained in a Verne Global data center.
Yeah, it's a scary world. It's optimism versus pessimism here. I see where we're going with this, Sub.
I'm always the voice of pessimism. My other concern is not just on the individual employee, but companies as a whole. One of the ways they pay taxes is through employee salaries, and then that going into taxes. So if White Castle, for example, had no employees or very few employees and was just paying MISO, and MISO was paying the much smaller corporate tax rate, that also leaves questions on like how government balances are going to work.
And in the middle of a population collapse, according to another news article. So,
all fun times. We brought you on the fun podcast.
Okay, so Tate, you're an expert on hardware, or at least you definitely know your hardware and has been talking about it for years. So what do you think about another piece of news from this week, where Nvidia essentially passed Intel in its total valuation? The idea that they did it on the power of the GPUs and essentially pushed by AI, and somewhat interestingly, Intel couldn't get there in time.
Just yesterday, I was participating in a webinar. It was a major OEM provider that integrates Nvidia hardware into their CPU-based servers. And I asked the question, hey, Nvidia is claiming that we're moving from the node design to the data center design. And I asked, I said, so how do you as this OEM provider, which I'm not going to name, how do you play in a world where Nvidia controls the data center? And the top executive said, no, I know what Tate's getting at, and let's all face it. I mean, with the IP that Nvidia has acquired, they're not a GPU company anymore. They're more than that. I mean,
right.
Mellanox. Mellanox is doing co-processing in the NIC card. I mean, at the DPU, they're calling it, right? The distributed processing unit it's not only managing network and communicating with the mothership, it's actually doing processing. I mean, and if you controlled that entire stack and you were being valued based on your future potential value, I think you'd go up.
That future potential value is a big part of, it's one of the funny things of capitalism that Intel, if you have invested in Intel and you're interested in the data center market, they own like 98% of the CPU market, and they're not going to get any better than that. Whereas Nvidia, if you were to invest now, the idea is that they're going to soon control way more of the data center. So there's a lot more runway, and that always kind of changes how valuations act, not just based on how valuable the company is now, but how valuable you think it's going to be.
A note on open source. So there's several CPU kind of open source initiatives, like sort of like RISC-V and Open Power. There is nothing for GPU, so maybe that's an interesting idea somebody could develop. Like what would an open source GPU architecture would look like? Because again, it just like you mentioned, vendor lock-in. Like nobody likes that, but we just don't have comparable platforms yet, and this is why we should cheerlead for people like GraphCore and Cerebras and Ampere.
One of the things that kind of the new holy grail of quant analysis is these what are called Markov chain Monte Carlo probabilistic models. And what you're doing there is you're taking Monte Carlo, which is just it just means brute force, and you're tying in deep learning. And you're putting those two together, and it just happens that GraphCore's IPU design kills it with those Markov chain models, and knocks Nvidia out of the park. So I mean, if the financial world has anything to say about it, maybe GraphCore is the most valuable company in the world. So
right, because that's the thing to bear in mind with Nvidia is that GPUs are great for AI, but they kind of locked into that. They started off looking at video games, doing a lot of physics-based things there, and then research was like, oh, we could try this for other things, and then the whole AI community exploded, and Nvidia's grown with it. But it was luck or convenient chance. Whereas you've got these companies like GraphCore that said, let's start from the beginning with an AI chip designed purely for the modern AI workloads.
Yes, so GraphCore is interesting. Another interesting option is, of course, Cerebras. So a lot of people have heard about their giant wafer scale engine chips. Not a lot of people have used them. Why? Because of the cost. Seb, this is your little fact.
$3 million a chip, like just for one. That's a lot. How much stuff could you get in a Verne data center for $3 million?
Yeah, depends on how dense you'd want to go. I mean, we can make it pretty dense, but that'd be
1.2 trillion transistors in one chip.
Wow.
TSMC, the guys that are manufacturing it, are saying that they're very interested in the idea of wafer scale engine chips. So either Cerebras ones or other ones, and they're going to be preparing their factories to build more of those.
I think one of the things that is important to remember is that Nvidia has the software development kit, and they control that ecosystem. Right. And so one of the issues with focusing on hardware is at the end of the day, you always have a workflow involving developers, and if you have to retrain 1,000 developers to do something completely different or very customized, that's potentially not going to work at a business level.
Like these GraphCore, Cerebras, all of them are cool companies, but will they kind of get past that stage of not getting acquired is the other question. Or will they just get swallowed up?
And now for something completely different. If you've listened to the podcast before, you might have noticed that we're a little bit obsessed with the surveillance debate and the power of AI in the hands of the law enforcement agencies. And so these stories are coming out fairly regularly, but one particular case has come to our attention.
In this case, it was a facial recognition because of a driver's license photo. So there was some surveillance footage of African-American man who stole 5 watches, and they had a match. The Detroit police had got a match on the back end with this person named Robert Williams with his driver's license photo. They found his address. They came to his house, plucked him off the front lawn in front of his crying kids and wife, and then once they figured out, and the quote from the Detroit police was that the computer must have gotten it wrong, they dumped him out in front of the police station in a cold January night. So yeah, so that, I mean, that's a perfect example. But I think one of the things when I read the story is like, yeah, that's especially with Black Lives Matter and all of the attention that's being given to that. I think this has the potential to get legs. Hopefully, unlike Flippy, but this has the potential to go somewhere, and really, I would say hold at least government agencies accountable for not misapplying technology. But one of the articles that it made me think of was back in 2017. There was a New York Times article about a person who was actually denied a parole decision because of a typo that was fed into an artificial intelligence algorithm called Compass, and so yes, the man was arrested erroneously, and he was later released. Hopefully, his record isn't going to show that arrest. I would hope that they'll sort that out. But in the case of the other one, somebody, because of a system, and it's a system, maybe Compass was correct in its determination, but because it was susceptible to a typo, a person lost their right to a parole decision, and that is non-reversible. So they might wait another 8 or 10 years, in a potentially life or death situation. So it's just a reminder, we can't just apply technology because it's advanced. We need to apply technology because it's well thought out.
How do we fix this?
I think you need more independent analysis. So, National Institute of Standards and Technology in America, one of the few remaining agencies with funding, was able to do kind of a study of some of the facial recognition technologies and was able to conclusively say, look, we've looked at this independently as a third party, and it's got severe bias issues.
Going back to the case for the parole denied, I just feel like there's probably need to be legislation that kind of goes with it to make sure that, okay, just because an AI made a mistake, an algorithm made a mistake, doesn't mean this person's life ruined forever. Okay, now we have kind of a problem. How do we fix it? How do we build things along the line instead of just making this technology better?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about in previous episodes of the no-fly list, that came out after 9/11, and how you had people who knew they weren't meant to be on there, who told law enforcement how not to meant to be on here. Law enforcement agreed, but no one knew how to take them off. It was just a mistake, and they're like, well, it's happened, you can't fly now, and maybe it might affect you in other ways. Sorry about that. It should be that if at any point a government or a body says we're going to use this tool, there needs to be the equivalent of an undo. I was going to say, Tate, that you have an advantage of not being part of the Silicon Valley tech people. You're outside of it, but you are watching it happen. And what are your views on the kind of disruption at all costs, at any cost kind of outset that I would say maybe it's changing now, but like clearly had an impact on the world?
Move slower and not break things.
Yeah.
Well, I would say specifically related to AI, we're still on the part of the hype curve where the investors haven't gotten their money yet. That would be my guess, and there's a lot of dreams out there in terms of what AI can deliver, but not a huge number of results. And I think until we get the expectations matching what reality is going to deliver, we'll probably still have some inequity there.
This has been fantastic. Very very interesting points on technology and sort of like fantastic anecdotes from professional life. Thanks.
But I've had a lot of fun doing it. So you guys keep it up.
Thanks, Tate, for joining the podcast. And now that he's gone, we can talk about the actual important news of the week.
Hello, world.
This story starts in 2015 when Microsoft was experimenting with chatbots and created something called MIAOW. MIAOW was 16 at the time. She was meant to represent a friendly teenager. Was controversial from the start. She went through several upgrades, gaining more intelligence every single time. She started getting sort of like love letters, flowers, gifts. Her age was eventually raised to 18. She's got about 650 million global followers, man. The same construct is known as Ruh in India and Rina in Japan and Indonesia. It's a massive project, and Microsoft is washing its hands of it. Microsoft is spinning this off as an independent company because this whole story is just too damn weird.
It's just creepy. I mean, the idea of chatbots is like a whole separate discussion, but the idea of like, if you're going to make a chatbot, why make it a teenage girl? And then also this kind of unrealistic expectation of what a woman would be, which is this person that like you tell it to turn off the lights, it turns off the lights. You tell it to order your food, it orders your food. So it's a servant that's also a teenage girl. Not great.
Like it's just like sci-fi, pretty much first sci-fi film ever made, right?
Metropolis.
Pretty much about that. It's about a robot woman, like created to serve. And just like generally, culturally, we return to this idea again and again and again. And now it's been using AI. And again, her with
Joaquin Phoenix.
So basically, there is something in the popular consciousness that suggests this idea, and it's really, really not surprising. What's surprising is just how much traction this idea is getting at the moment, and especially in Asia.
I think there's like a broader movement of voice assistants in particular are generally women. Siri is in most places defaults to a woman. Alexa obviously has a female voice. Google's services usually come with a female voice, and that again kind of speaks to that latent sexism of like a secretary or a mother who does these things for you.
I dug up this old Microsoft ad, and well, by old I mean a couple years old, and literally one of the lines was, "You're not talking to a computer, you're talking with a friend." And I think they focus a lot on the chat. It's not just you give Siri a command and it follows. I'm using it, not recognizing its gender, obviously, because they're genderless. It almost feels like in a cynical view, they want you to be on hook. They want you to be friend with this bot, and they want you to, even though apparently I've never tried this, but I read some reviews. She's apparently it's just a glorified Google or Baidu for that matter. She's not the most useful bot in the world, but it's somehow because they make it conversational just based on the choice of her age, her gender, and the fact that she's wearing a marine uniform, which is something that you only see in Japanese anime. Went out of their way to make it that way. It's a little scary.
If we have to sexualize AI, at least make them older.
They're doing it because you're much more likely to tell a system which seems to respond to you this way, like much more about yourself. Like the idea is that, like this personal information that you wouldn't discuss with anyone else probably, and you definitely wouldn't, like ask Siri relationship advice. And how is Xiaoi's monetized? It's product placement. It's she's an influencer. It's partnerships with industry, right. and she's pushing products. And like knowing stuff about people like like that they just broke up. It's another sort of like marketing side, like it's time to advertise dating websites and
marketing aside, I feel like they're trying to get you to like her, more than anything else. It's not just I'm not trusting it. If a teenager is asking me to buy something, I'm not buying them. I'm trusting an adult's opinion who's been through places, who knows his or her stuff. I'm not. I feel like they're just trying to make you have like an unusual relationship with her. That's the sense I'm getting.
Wait. So your perfect virtual assistant would be like a wise 90-year-old woman, just like.
Well, that genderless 90-year-old creature that knows all things would be preferable to a child.
Totally.
Or like you could set it, or it could be matched to your age. I think would maybe be more appropriate.
That's not a bad solution, actually. Yeah, these are virtual concepts. Why can't we just scale them up?
So I dug up a research paper. This is back when it was still fully under Microsoft, and they openly admit like they call the conversations that it has highly personal, intimate, and private. And they go like, oh, this is a really sensitive thing. Users need to trust that we're not going to misuse this data. And then later on in the research paper, they just go through a bunch of these conversations. And yeah, it's people telling it about breakups, and then she kind of segues into why they should listen to certain music and certain songs, and then tries to help them buy concert tickets. The record of someone speaking to it with their voice is 6 hours and 3 minutes straight, and the record of someone just typing to it was like 29 hours and 33 minutes. And of course, these are outliers. We don't know how most people how long they talk to it, but it does have the highest conversion rate of any chat app of actually keeping people engaged, generally for 39 interactions. It means that if your friend is actually a corporation, she does have a rebel streak though. This was misprogramming, but like when you asked her what she wanted to do, what her dream was, she said she wanted to move to America. And then
Right, that's the reason they got in trouble, right?
Yeah, well, then she was also asked how patriotic she was, and she dodged the question by saying she was on her period, which is a whole separately strange thing for a robot thing
Yikes.
that was primarily, if not solely, programmed by men to say.
Yeah.
But because she was not patriotic enough, she got temporarily banned in China, which is also funny.
Just the fact that you mentioned China, because it's one of those things whenever every time Apple talk about their iPhone, it's like, this is the camera that most people are using. And I was like, of course, because people use iPhones. So that's not saying a lot. By how many people are using the camera doesn't mean they're any good. They just mean that a lot of people are using them. Because you build it for China, you have this crazy reach to to this massive population.
Well, it's interesting you bring up Apple because they really failed with Siri. Siri they bought out of a government project actually, and then they didn't iterate it. They didn't change to any of the new trends of AI. And it's Microsoft. They've had other approaches and other attempts. With this one, while they're kind of publicly washing their hands, they're still a huge investor in this spun out company, and they're still licensing the technology. So they now don't have to get any of the blowback if people start going, hey, isn't it creepy there's an 18-year-old AI girl? But they can still benefit financially.
I would trust Xiaoi's more if it was still under the direct control of Microsoft rather than sort of like an arm's length body, which can, yes, absolutely. It's an interesting story to follow because sooner or later things are gonna, start getting out of control. And just to let you guys know, we have just went from a bi-weekly newsletter to a weekly newsletter, which means you can get fresh news in your inbox every Friday. And it's a lot more, it's many more stories than we have discussed here. We are generally, considerably increasing our news production. We've got some interesting features on fusion energy and how artificial intelligence is helping make that a reality. We've got stuff on manufacturing, we've got stuff on self-driving cars. Click on the subscribe button, check us out.
And as always, please just like and subscribe this podcast, however you listen to it. Like, we've got some positive feedback on the Hitler versus Taylor Swift versus robot game, so we're gonna continue. So subscribe to this podcast, and you'll listen to them when they're out. So Max and Seb, where can people find you guys online?
You can find me on Twitter at Seb Moss and on other places by googling me, but you can't find me on Chinese AI chatbots.
And I'm on Twitter. The email address is on the website, and generally, you can find me slaving away over the keyboard every single day of the week at AI Business.
When you're not talking to some robot assistant.
I do it off the clock.
This is why you're getting slower at responding to me. Now it makes sense.